Welcome, everyone. My name is Anne. I'm the Executive Director of the Peace Department. And thank you for choosing to be here tonight during a very busy Climate Week. The Peace Department is thrilled to be hosting this event alongside our carbon residency partners, Metabolic, Open Earth, and Dark Matter Labs, as well as Rachel Howard. The Carbon Residency is a collective of subject matter experts in finance, climate, systems change, sustainability, and social impact that came together last year to create the Place-Based Transition Fund's Playbook. The Playbook is a holistic framework for blended finance portfolio construction that is locally rooted and decarbonization focused, with equity and community uplift at its core. What unites all the co-organizers of this event is a commitment to true systems change, breaking down silos and maximizing efficiency and collaboration, specifically around the place-based paradigm. My team and I are so excited the place-based approach is gaining traction because, in many ways, aligned thinking was the genesis of the Peace Department. James Sterlin, our intrepid founder, launched the organization under a very similar premise, that we could identify a particular location in partnership with community stakeholders, find an existing, successful anchoring intervention that was already promoting one or more sustainable development goals, and then essentially plug in additionally SDG augmenting solutions in close partnership with community members to create a holistic, self-reinforcing ecosystem that would foster sustainability, equity, and ultimately peace. Our mission, after all, is peace through sustainable development. It's empowering to come full circle and play a part in our partners' transformative efforts to breathe life into localized but replicable models that can catalyze the kinds of seismic shifts we desperately need to tackle the interwoven crises of our time. This event was born out of a desire to come together around two different but interrelated areas of work that could benefit immensely from collaboration and cross-pollination: the Place-Based Transition Fund Playbook and the Circular Cities model. Metabolic especially has engaged deeply in both of these initiatives, and there's a desire to share best practices and create synergies to maximize learning and impact. What unites the place-based and circular city initiatives is the belief that system change begins with creating standardized and replicable methods to accelerate economic and sustainable transitions one place at a time. A place-based approach provides an incredible testing ground for integrating solutions, creating self-reinforcing systems, and forging true connections with communities who must be at the forefront of this revolution. We welcome you here tonight to learn, be inspired, challenge yourselves to think beyond outdated approaches, and identify gaps and leverage opportunities around which we can come together to do audacious work. And now I'll welcome Matthew Maroney to provide some context for tonight's event. Matt.
Hey, here I am.
Matt is manager at Metabolic, where he translates complex and abstract scientific concepts into actionable strategies, helping clients navigate the intricacies of green finance and circular economy models. He possesses a deep understanding of deal structuring and securities issuance, data science and statistical simulations and impact metrics, skills he now applies to develop replicable corporate structures and financial instruments. Matt was a core participant in the Carbon Residency, so we're thrilled to have him kick things off with an overview of the Place-Based Transition Fund's Playbook.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Christine and Alia and Ryan from the Peace Department. Really nice to be back here. It's amazing to think that in so short of a time, this Place-Based Transition Fund is really getting a lot of momentum as a concept. It really resonates with a lot of folks. It's kind of creating a bridge between a lot of the work that communities has been doing for decades with some of the language that the financial world understands, and so it's been really useful. So I was told to give have a quick overview of the playbook, and the playbook was really designed to be like a replicable methodology, or like James and I were always like, it's like an algorithm, right? Where it's like you could program it in, and it's kind of like a function that you could run in different geographies. So it's a 5-step process that we put together, and it was really developed out of a lot of conversations with the Peace Department and all the participating authors, but also many people in this room gave really valuable and critical insights on the work that they've been doing for a very long time. So it's the 5 steps we put out was the first is geographic selection. So like, where do you want to do this? You might know already, or you might just want to have a particular impact in a certain sector. So there's a scorecard on how to measure geographies. Once you select a geography, you look at the policy plans. So what's the climate plans? What are the economic plans? Community uplift plans? Using that to kind of frame some of the scenario planning. And then you look at all of the material flows, greenhouse gas, but also energy, water, plastics, etc. You use that information then to say that's the current state of the system. So then you got to start designing where does the system want to go? And so that involves a lot of community engagement. What is the vision of what needs to be done? How do people want to live their lives? And then you can start to design different transition plans and scenarios and start to understand what are the different projects and ventures that need to be created and mapped together. Some of them might exist already. Some might need to be created. Some might be assets like real estate or energy and ventures and bodegas. And how do you basically put all these together into a portfolio structure and start to think about how you contract some of those activities. Of course, then once you have that map, you need to actually find the stuff, right? And so that's where places like the Innovation Barn come into play, because they actually can serve as central hubs where people can come, they can work on their projects, they can meet with experts and understand all of the pieces they don't know, which is a lot. But all the expertise is there, and it's really just having this central convenient place is so critical. Then you start to evaluate the projects and then start to prepare them. So, there's these beautiful ideas, and how do you turn them into formats that people understand with like data rooms and subscription agreements and boring Excel models and really, really long legal contracts. I really like that stuff, but so, some people don't. And then you need to actually, once you have all that, then you actually need to like do the capital structuring. So that can be somewhat standard, debt, equity, but a lot of this stuff needs, blended capital. We talk about this a lot at Climate Week, okay, but also so things like loan guarantees and different types of loan guarantees for different projects, but also governance structures like steward ownership. So how do you ensure that the portfolio isn't sold off to people that don't care about the actual transition planning that you're trying to achieve? And then finally, then it's about replicability and scalability. So how can the steward ownership model kind of create cash flows that then can create a second place-based transition fund in that area? And how can those funds connect to different regions? And then ultimately, how can people invest in either all of the transition funds in the world into like one kind of index that could replace something like Vanguard or something like that? So there's a lot of people doing a lot of these things around the world, and we're hoping that at least thinking about these different multi-asset portfolios can help people kind of bridge this gap between the good work that communities are doing with so little recognition and the financial world, which kind of has typically said, oh no, that's only nonprofit stuff. This is a way for it to get a little more serious and structured and actually be able to do the work instead of asking for the money. So that's kind of the overview. We did release a technical appendix that came out. It's still kind of draft, but it is available. We're looking to kind of continue to expand that methodology to, let's say, have the version 1 and 2 and 3 of the algorithm with all this kind of cool AI stuff and satellite data and stuff. There's a lot of room for improvement. We're looking for partners on people that either want to implement this in practice, like Charlotte or Puerto Rico, but also people that want to contribute to the paper, the methodology. If any of those topics sound interesting, we're always interested in talking to experts about that and integrating their thoughts. So thank you, and I'll pass it back.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to now pass things over to Eva Gladdick and Amy Ossifer. First, let me intro you so convincing Robert to stand here, hopefully, but to spotlight their collaborative work in Charlotte and its innovation barn, which Matt mentioned, as an opportunity to use a physical hub to drive broader economic transition via place-based transition funds. Eva is the founder and CEO of Metabolic, a consulting research and venture building firm focused on tackling global sustainability challenges and advancing a circular economy. Eva founded Metabolic in 2012 with the mission of transitioning the global economy to a fundamentally sustainable and circular state. In her years of consulting work and concept development, she has advised hundreds of organizations ranging from progressive cities to global NGOs and industry leaders in nearly every economic sector. She is an expert in technical environmental management techniques and has developed a number of frameworks for systems thinking, the circular economy, and sustainable design. Eva is also consistently listed among the top influencers in sustainability in the Netherlands, a country recognized as leading the transition to a circular economy. And Amy is the executive director of Envision Charlotte, a public-private plus collaborative designed to make Charlotte's urban core a living laboratory to foster innovation to improve sustainability, resilience, economic competitiveness, and quality of life that can be measured, scaled, and replicated beyond the urban core and in other communities. With Amy's leadership, the organization has successfully implemented groundbreaking projects that have positively impacted the community and been internationally recognized. She's been recognized as Business Journal's top women in business and named one of the 50 most influential women in Charlotte. We're so lucky to have powerhouse women here. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here in this beautiful space. And that is really embarrassing to hear read out. And I'm realizing that I need to update my LinkedIn. Before we kick off, I also just wanted to say, I know Matt already mentioned this, but there are so many people in this room who have contributed to this work. So Martine and Open Earth Foundation and all the people who have been actually working on the paper, and our friends from Dark Matter Labs are, I think, coming. And I also wanted to say that John Holm, who's over there, he's actually the leader, together with Pixar Global, one of our close partner organizations, of the Circular City Coalition, which has been actually codifying a lot of this work and driving forward circular innovation in cities across the U.S. So we're really proud partners of Sarah. But another person that I'm delighted to work with is Amy. And so I'm going to say a few things about how we ended up working in this space, how it kind of led to, fed into this place-based transition fund work, and then we're going to turn our attention to what's going on in Charlotte and the commitment of Charlotte through people like Amy, especially Amy, to take this forward. So when I set up Metabolic 12 years ago, I was getting really frustrated with the lack of actual implementation. So I had gone to the Netherlands to run a sustainability consultancy that really focused on the built environment. And we produced all these cool reports for housing corporations and developers, and then we saw them not actually implement anything. And so I had this like crossroads moment in 2012 where I could have come back to the US or stayed in the Netherlands, and I decided to stay and set up Metabolic as a systems change agency. So I really wanted to create an organization that would do whatever is necessary to really find those leverage points to drive large-scale systems change. And in our first year, we really did a lot of this applied work. We set up an urban mushroom farming company. We did a whole kind of series of experiments on polyculture, greenhouse production. And one of the biggest things that we did was we set up this urban living lab called Decool, which is a brownfield site that was polluted. So there was a shipyard there that ended up getting like a lot of oil and paint and stuff like that into the soil. And the city had this competition. They said, okay, whoever can come up with a great plan to do something with this site for the next 10 years can have it. And we won that competition with a group of architects. And we won with a concept that was quite unique. So we actually took these houseboats that were going to be demolished because they were old, crappy buildings. And we eco-retrofitted them. We craned them onto the land. We created this walkway between them. We created a forbidden garden of plants that were specially selected to clean the soil. And we designed this whole system to close all the different resource cycles on the site. And we were so excited about this because finally it was real stuff. Like we were actually doing something. It was in a physical place. There was a huge community that rallied around this because we didn't have the that we did this very cheaply. Also, that's like an interesting part of the story. And it became this like really important flashpoint that kind of kicked off a lot of our work on urban transition. And then we started getting asked to progressively do more and more stuff on this in this space. And 7 years ago, or something like that, Amy and a group of people from Charlotte came to visit the Koval, this project that we did. And because of that, there was this like inspiration this is one of the things that I noticed about the difference between the US and Europe. In Europe, a lot of people like to finance projects where you do a lot of thinking and research, and that's really valuable. And it's great that we get to do that, but then like it takes a long time to implement stuff. Whereas in the US, it's like maybe the research isn't funded that often, and it would be nice if it was more. But then once there's an idea to do something, and like, let's do it now. So the team from Charlotte, including the people from the mayor's office, and I mean, Amy, they talked about this, came, and immediately decided that they wanted to make Charlotte a circular city. So we came in and did that strategy. And what came out of that is the innovation. One of the recommendations was to build a physical place like we had in Amsterdam to be the innovation center for the circular economy. And I'm going to turn my attention now to Amy. So this kind of anchoring initiative, we're going to hear all about how it's working right now, but it also can become the basis for a much larger expansion of moving into place-based transitions. And that's the thing that we're also excited about right now. So, Amy, tell us about, first of all, say whatever you want. But
So my favorite song.
okay, not,
What is it?
but
Today.
good question. But in the context of what I just said, okay, all right. Also, tell us about the innovation bar and how it's been going. What is it?
What is it? So I'll back up a little bit. So as she mentioned, when I first started at Envision, which was 11 years ago, the organization was 13 years old. Our first project was around energy efficiency, and this is what put us on the international map. So we looked at our uptown, we call downtown, uptown, this is Sonny's There are, at the time, there were 64 large commercial buildings of 10,000 square feet or larger, and the city leaders were able to get 61 of those 64 buildings to sign an energy pledge to reduce their energy use by 20% over 5 years, put shadow meters in all 61 of those buildings. We partnered with the university to take that data and start driving energy use down, not only through systems changes, but also through behavioral changes. That put us on the international map. How did you get 61 buildings to do this? We decreased the energy use by 19.2% reduction, which was $26 million in savings. So we were looking at things in water, air, energy, and waste. And at that time, China had stopped taking our recyclables, okay, more like our trash. And so we were like, okay, we need to look at a different way to do this in Charlotte. So we took the city manager, Mayor Pro Tem, head of solid waste, business leaders over to Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and Barcelona to look at how they were managing no waste. In steps Eva, and she's talking to our city manager and says, hey, you know what you can do? You can divert from the waste stream, create jobs and innovation. And I think the only thing that Marcus heard, our city manager, was jobs. We've done, city, right, let's do that. So he hired them on the spot to come and look at our waste systems and what materials we had to transition to create that jobs innovation. So we kind of scrapped the traditional way of looking at sustainability in the 4 pillars and went to the circular economy. And I do have to say that this was 6 years ago. In the U.S., as you all know, we were a little distracted by that. Slightly. And so the circular economy was really a new concept for cities. And so we were the first city to say, all right, let's create a strategy. So we started looking at organics, textiles, concrete demolition, and plastics. And the other recommendation was to build an innovation hub. So the city manager leans over at the meeting and goes, I got a barn for you. I'm like, okay. It ended up being like, it's a 100-year-old building where supposedly cattle was. I don't like make snow. They've done some research. But I will say during the DNC and the RNC, we had the mounted horses. So there have been cattle in this building. It's a 36,000 square foot building that the city owned, which is important because I think lots of cities have assets like this that are sitting there that can be used for something like this. So It's a 36,000 square foot building. We decided to make it the hub for our transition to the circular economy. COVID hit. There are some supply chain issues, if you all recall that. I like to try to not think about it. So it drove up the construction costs. So we only renovated half of the building. So 18,000 square feet. And what we have in there is an ecosystem of all of these different for-profits and non-profits that are swimming the same direction. And sometimes we collaborate, sometimes we have our own goals, but it has been very interesting. We curated certain organizations, like we wanted aquaponics to showcase what a closed-loop system looked like. We have composting, we have soldier fly composting, we have food waste reduction strategies. Of course, we had to have beer and wine as we needed that. So we brought in a company called Change Please, which is a nonprofit coffee company out of the UK that also has beer and wine. This, I'm there. We do plastics. We have a precious plastics lab. So we have a lot of these different programs that we work on. But what's been really interesting, within the first 3 months that we were open, I had to hire a public manager because of how many people wanted to come to the barn and take tours. So we do 2 free tours every week. We do field trips. We do volunteers, tons of volunteers. I mean, and we track all of this because we do a city report. But it has been amazing how this has been received from our community. And we were on the cover of Newsweek as one of the 5 cities to look at for sustainability because of this place. So we've broken it down into education, innovation, and collaboration. So we do a ton of education, whether it's kids, we go do lunch and learns with corporations. We do collaborations. For example, we started this thing called social districts in Charlotte. It's basically public drinking out on the streets. But the way the state did this was you take a plastic cup, put a sticker on it, and you can walk outside. Well, we didn't want all these plastic cups going into the waste stream, so we worked with the first social district, and we have stainless steel cups that we do instead. So we do these collaborations, and then innovations. Right now, we're working on a big one around glass, where we're taking back-of-house glass from our Spectrum Center where the horns play. We crush it. They rewrote their specs for their renovations, and they're going to take that glass, they put it back in the concrete for all of their renovations. So it's been unbelievable what we have seen just in terms of the engagement with the community, but now it's time to ramp it up, which enter in.
So Amy and I have been having all sorts of conversations over the last couple of years, and it's been incredible, especially after the COVID restrictions really lifted, how much amazing work has been done, and all of the different things. So one of the organizations in the barn has been diverting thousands of pounds of food. There's food security issues in Charlotte as well. We've been doing, in parallel, a study with the Mecklenburg County, looking at how 50% of the people living in that county are food secure. And if you take these different types of challenges and you take a place like the barn, there's so much that you can activate and actually raise up. So there are many, many opportunities to, if you were to do this kind of mapping, mobilize the community, identify the different kind of vision approaches and kind of interventions, and create this type of portfolio. We believe that you could really massively start to solve challenges at an unprecedented scale. So one of the things that we've talked about is food waste. And so Amy is really passionate about figuring out how to get all food waste out of the landfills. That is going to have a huge impact on reducing the amount of methane that's released. That food can be actually make sure that we're actually keeping it as food and that it's reducing the food insecurity issues. And so we were even just workshopping what such a program could look like to create a specific portfolio focused on food and reducing the organics. And so Amy, I am just wondering, with all that you have managed to do in the barn, what do you think this kind of place-based transition funds approach could allow you to do that would go beyond what you're able to do right now?
Well, organics is the perfect example. So one of our organizations we have at the barn is called, really, it just left me, went out of my ball. But one of their big partners is Trader Joe's. 3 times a week, Trader Joe's brings all of their nearly expired foods to the barn. They have a whole host of volunteers that come in, and if you think about like a container of strawberries and one strawberry is bad, typically a grocery store is going to throw that away. They bring that to the barn, they take the bad strawberry out, they feed it to our soldier flies for composting, they take the good ones, and they distribute it to 14 mobile markets. We also have traditional composting on site. So if you were to take this type of approach and build out the infrastructure to get all of these organics out. So in addition, you build up composting opportunities, you build up more food opportunities for food to get back into the community. You partner with the Trader Joe's. We just recently brought in Canteen, which is a division of Compass, who does all of the back of house food services for Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all those guys. Now you start working within those systems, or the Hornets, or the Panthers. You have like an incredible portfolio that we could immediately put these funds towards and do all kinds of different activities, whether it's building out the infrastructure or giving to nonprofits for education. We were talking about this earlier, Charlotte has Lowe's headquarters there. So you've got home improvement, you've got Honeywell around systems, you've got a few banks, to say the least. We've got the second largest hospital system. And so you bring these different groups that everyone wants to be involved in the barn because it's bright and shiny and cool and everyone loves coming there. This is a way to bring all of those forces together to even catalyze it to the next level once you get this going.
Yeah, so we were basically doing like a quick back of the envelope exercise of looking at, okay, so out of all of the food waste that you have, the part that is preventable, what are the root causes that are driving that? And what are the kind of innovations that you can invest in or apply to make sure that is not being wasted? Everything from, technologies like stickers on food packaging that change color to make sure that people know not to throw it out. We found out in some of our research that 30% of food waste that happens in homes happens because people don't know how to interpret best before dates. And the moment that one of those is elapsed, they're like, oh, it's not safe anymore, and they throw it out. So all of these different types of innovations at different levels, you can readily assemble a portfolio. And this is just around food. And you can look at building materials. You could look at manufacturing of different types. There's an amazing group here that's focusing on textiles and
soon to be our new partner.
Exactly. And actually, Charlotte and the whole region has a huge and illustrious history with textile production. It's still one of the top places in. Thank you so much. I was going to ask them how much time we actually have. But so in any case, we are really enthusiastic, and there's a huge number of stakeholders that are ready to go and to collaborate. And I think that Charlotte is the perfect testing zone.
I would say Charlotte is the perfect place. We were the first city to have a strategy around transitioning our city. We've got engaged people ready to go. We've got a physical space. We've got all the partners. So let's do this. That was fun.
So we're so happy. Okay, thanks. I was going to say, I hope you can see our enthusiasm, and we're really just happy to talk to everyone who wants to engage on how to take these kinds of ideas.
Does anyone have any questions real quick?
Yeah, so really amazing and inspiring and ironic because I was just with a group from Charlotte visiting you guys at the Google, and all these groups were like, hey, we should make a living lab. It's Gambrell Foundation, and they didn't know about innovation, and they didn't know about this. Had to go to Amsterdam to learn about it, right? It's actually current mayor.
So you're telling me I'm not doing a very good job.
Well, I say that not to criticize at all, but I'm saying that it's the current mayor, it's the different city leaders, creatives, Charlotte, all these folks, they didn't know about it because they're focused on a lot of social issues. So they're like youth, purpose, and belonging. They're talking about loneliness. They're talking about equity and inclusion and generally, and nothing about sustainability. And what I hear you guys saying is everything about sustainability and circular systems, but not a lot necessarily about the social issues. And maybe it's coming later.
Yep.
But that's not so anyways, this is not a criticism at all, but it's to say that a plea to connect these worlds much more closely.
Yes.
And or maybe it's the question about is that well, how could that be? How could that be?
Well, to be honest, I think if you look at the work that the Circular City Coalition is doing, it's entirely centered in the social side of things. And this we see as a vehicle to really using these mechanisms of venture building, community building, et cetera. You address a lot of those social issues. You also create a huge amount of social uplift. You create opportunities for social mobility. So actually, something I was really delighted to see is that when we started our work together, there was this report that came out where Charlotte was the lowest ranked city in terms of upward social mobility in the United States. And just 2 weeks ago, a report came out that now Charlotte is at number 38. It's a huge improvement in just 5 years. I don't, but I think we see these things as inherently interconnected. And I think we're talking about the kind of like top layer. And I think that the Puerto Rico case is going to go deeper into the layers below. But for sure, I would love to discuss how these things are interconnected. And you should talk to John about that too.
Anyone else?
So it's one more question or another comment?
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect segue, actually, because thank you so much. It was so amazing. But I think, the impetus behind this whole evening was to show that regardless of the entry point or the anchoring intervention, this place-based transition model is going to apply. And then you can augment it by plugging in other SDG augmenting solutions, right? To make it a holistic approach to, generating the kind of change that all of us want to see in the world. So thank you guys so much for that really incredible exploration of this initiative and your partnership. We'll now travel to Puerto Rico with Natalia Alvarez de Jesus and Eduardo Carrera to talk about Platform for Social Impact and how its approach to social and economic equity aligns with the Place-Based Transition Fund methodology, laying the groundwork for exciting collaboration and expansion. Natalia is a program officer at the Peace Department, and in her 2+ years with the team, she has been the beating heart of this organization. I'm sure a lot of you here can attest to that. She has been integral to the Peace Department's programming, including the carbon residency, and our convening and coalition building efforts. Natalia holds a master's in international relations and was a Fulbright grantee in Brazil. And her personal connection to Puerto Rico, as well as her deep understanding of its socio-political and economic dynamics, have provided the groundwork for the carbon residency's exploration of PR as a pilot country for implementing our efforts on the ground. Eduardo, who has joined us from Puerto Rico, is founder and CEO of Platform for Social Impact. Under his leadership, PSI has continued its mission of eradicating poverty in Puerto Rico through strategic investments in innovations that promote education, job creation, and healthcare services. Prior to his role at PSI, Eduardo dedicated 22 years to the Boys and Girls Club of Puerto Rico, where he held several key positions, including that of CEO. And before his work with the Boys and Girls Club, Eduardo was the president of Emergency Mitigation Corps. Welcome you both to the stage.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here, especially highlighting Puerto Rico. I always talk about Puerto Rico because I'm from there. Now it's relevant for this conversation. So, as Anne mentioned, I'm program officer at Peace Department, and I'm so excited to bring Platform for Social Impact and Eduardo here. When we first brought together the carbon residency team, the intention was to pilot whatever outcome came out of that, in this case, a place-based transition fund. And Puerto Rico was part of that conversation, one, because part of the group did have experience in Puerto Rico, whether they were from there, or, for example, Open Earth had done some work with some schools in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. So it was part of a relevant conversation as this place-based transition fund was developing. And PSI crossed our paths. And it was such a serendipitous connection of blended finance for social impact in a way that has not been done in Puerto Rico before. So, Eduardo, thank you for your time here. I would love for you to kind of just tell us what Platform for Social Impact is for those who don't know here, and we can kind of set the stage from there.
So I heard system change since the beginning of the conversation. So this is a local initiative really trying to change the needle. And our needle have a specific target, which is reduction of child poverty. Puerto Rico have 57% of child poverty. For context, Mississippi have 28%. And Puerto Rico as being part of the United States, I'm sure that you never heard that statistic coming across your desk. So part of our conversation around system change is really what it takes to move the needle. Our conclusion is that to move the needle, you really need to organize how. And when you start peeling layers of power, really the world runs in dollar power. And that's something that communities usually don't speak to. Usually the conversations are more about show me the program, show me the kids, show me something that I can hold on to feel good. But the real conversation about what really takes to do systemic change, which is how you move power to shift systems, and that the most important source of that power is capital. How you do that is often left out of the table. So for us, we started at a desire to do more for our communities. We were really ignorant to really what mattered, but we were very committed, and we just started digging into some new solutions. We put together research in Puerto Rico around this issue. We started to influence policymakers with policy recommendations. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, we announced a $100 million investment in one of the poorest communities in Puerto Rico. And a combination of public resources, philanthropy, tax credits, and some of instruments that were available for us. And to do that, really the anchor point was impact, was the change that we want to see. And around that, we organized a whole system.
Amazing. So Platform for Social Impact has an Oasis of initiative with a charter school, a family and business center, and a health clinic. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and why those were the projects that were chosen for this community, and maybe tell us a bit more about the community that was chosen to deploy this project on?
Yeah, so we felt that there's a continuous disconnect between the idea of impact and the recipients of impact, and how that materializes in people's lives is in their neighborhoods. If they want to see impact in their neighborhood, they want to see impact in the way that they approach work, in the way that they receive health services, and the way that they educate themselves. So for us, Oasis meant a solution to what most of the vulnerable communities in Puerto Rico, outside Puerto Rico, have, which is deserts of economic opportunity, deserts of health, deserts of education, quality education. So Oasis combines the idea of making these services accessible in communities. So we chose a community in Puerto Rico that is the 7th largest densely populated area. So we're talking about 2 miles right across the airport in Salon. And in that 2 miles, we have about 75,000 people. Very low income. And the idea is to make services and opportunities available in community and not having to extract people to access opportunities.
Awesome. As many are aligned here in the room, private capital needs to be in the conversation when talking about the true impact and system change. However, it's not always the easiest process. I would love to highlight that this is the first blended finance project for social impact on the island. So it's definitely a big achievement. What were some of the I'm so lucky that I'm here with them. What were some of the barriers that you faced? Because today, actually, I ran into someone who was trying to install solar at Invest, and she wanted to put her job on how difficult that 10 mini grids were. So I can't imagine $100 million portfolio for social impact. Tell us a little bit about the barriers.
Access to capital. When you come from places like Puerto Rico and communities that have the same characteristic that Puerto Rico in the U.S. and other places, capital don't share the same spaces than solution designers.
Yeah.
They don't speak the same language. They don't know each other. There's a big chasm between those two groups. So for us, Puerto Rico, it's a fairly, sizable economy that only have 3 commercial banks, no community banks, very little impact. No impact funds of any size that are. So for us, when we started to organize the stack, we spent almost a year and a half trying to convince local folks that this is something that we need to do locally, that we need to own locally. And at one point, we just were putting at risk the realization of this project by trying to convince people that we're not getting there soon enough. So we had to put the show on the road and to talk to some folks in the States that actually decided that it was worth taking this risk. But this access of capital is something that you don't fix with one deal. Like, there's something here, and we are arguing now. Yes, it's good that we were able to amass this capital, but that community alone needs 5 times that amount. And there's 78 other communities around this island that benefit from something like that. So for us, the conversation is all about scale. We need to get out of our minds the $1 million conversation and talk about systemic change. No, what we want to be talking about systemic change. We need to be serious about how we deploy billions, and the only way that you do that is like in a systemic approach to bringing capital to these places.
Awesome. I know the plans are not to just be a school, a center, and a clinic. I know there are plans for some solar panels as well. What are your hopes to expanding this Oasis model with other SDG-aligned solutions? Because right now you're talking about the social and economic impacts, but the environmental impacts are there as well, especially for Puerto Rico. As many know, Hurricane Maria devastated the island. Hurricane Fiona, this will not be the last conversation, unfortunately, where Puerto Rico is probably devastated by a hurricane. What are the plans for Oasis and PSI in that regard?
So part of, ironically, part of what created this opportunity for Puerto Rico is climate. Puerto Rico had the same problem for the last 40 years, except that right now it's sitting in $100 billion of public resources for reconstruction. Mm-hmm. The issue with this is that local communities are more equipped to access that capital. So it's an extractive exercise. It's an exercise that really don't respond to the needs of the communities. But the good thing is that there's $100 billion there sitting in the public resources that could be leveraged. And that's part of what we are, with this first project, we intended to do. And that's how we convince local officials. We say, we need to do one, so people understand that we could use the public reconstruction funding in this way and to build other initiatives. So yes, this is for us a proof of concept. As we move forward, we are already considering the organization of a larger fund to finance other growth.
Awesome. Let's see. We often talk about this bottom-up approach. However, at the bottom there are many actors. There's local government, there's a community. What do you think is like a really good combination of actors who should be at the forefront of these conversations? Because you've been in this community for 7+ years, and through the Boys and Girls Club, you've engaged with so many communities here, 22 years in that career. So what's kind of something you've seen that's like, oh, you need community buy-in first, we need government buy-in first. There's so many layers to government, especially in Puerto Rico, in this Commonwealth kind of limbo. There is that added barrier as well. So we'd love to hear your experience with that in closing this first campus.
So I'm going to bring it back to power, because we see in everything now to the lens of power. And for us, and this is for our reality, we understood that, or we are operating under the hypothesis that there's 4 sources of power that can really help us move the needle. One is people. Having the ability of getting lots of people together around an issue. So there's something there around cultivating communities, cultivating networks of communities, because that's a source of power to some of the changes that we needed, and we use some of that in this project. The second two are information and ideas. It's not enough to present projects. We have to present projects in the scheme of what those projects mean to a system and how can they influence public policy, because that's where the real dollars are that we want to leverage. So that idea of partnering with public stakeholders and being a source of ideas and a source of information is important. And lastly, is, again, going back to capital. And capital is top heavy. So for us to think that, a little community or a marginalized community is going to convince these people that have the means, doesn't work that way. So at that level, you need to have, in that level, who has is the most important indicator of success. And who has the owner of capital is another owner of capital. So you need, yes, for us, I think that for change to be dynamic and sustainable, you need some sort of those four combinations, because you're going to need them in different states. But if we're going to move capital, we need to understand that that is a selected group that is holding it right now. And we have to be intentional of how we create bridges with that group without disconnecting from our communities. But really, if we want to move capital, it's a top-heavy exercise.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about being apparatus where this Oasis Cannabis Hub is? This is very near the airport in Salon. It's one of the poorest zip codes in the whole United States. So can you tell me a little bit about that, the players in this community, school, the clinic, just a bit of the story, so we kind of have an image in our head of what's ahead.
So, very urban, because we are right across from the Salon airport. This was back in the 50s area that's around a big body of water in the Salon area. That was really where poor people from the countryside came, where jobs were. That's where jobs were available. So in these 2 miles, basically you find 9 public housing projects that are larger. The largest one having 2,200 units. So it's a little city. Then you have lands that were given to low-income folks for free, so they could build. A place that had been underinvested for traditionally, and then a place that somebody decided to put the largest high-end mall 5 years ago in that community. And when we asked the developers what was the impact of that in the community, they said, "Don't worry, it will be maintenance and security jobs." So you had the economy. You have an economy that is across the bridge, because there's literally a bridge to get to the tourist area. And if you're in a car, it takes you 8 minutes to cross the bridge and get to the hotel. If you want to work in a hotel and have to go public transportation, take you 2.5 hours each way. So it's there. But there's also a place of a lot of working people that really, like, when you talk to them, they just say, "We want the best for our kids. We don't know how to," and they're holding out to the power of change, which is hope. Mm-hmm. And this project, what we are more prideful about this project is that 7 years ago, we actually took a blank canvas with the community, kids, teenagers, older people, and say, like, dare to dream. We're going to be here with you. We don't know how we're going to fix it, but we're going to be here with you. And to see that manifestation coming to reality, that is the currency that we can move to other places.
Amazing. My closing question, are you excited that these places are such a fun conversations are gaining fractions, and do you hope that Puerto Rico will be at the forefront of some of them?
I'm excited and frustrated because this is not going fast enough. What we're seeing globally in terms of what is changing, the nature of work, how's that going to reorganize societies. We're not going fast enough. And I feel like what happens in the next 10 years is going to provide the frameworks for the next 30 or 40. And we're here. And sometimes we want to hear each other and don't get to action. So excited. At the same time, I carry the frustration where I think if you want to do systemic change, you're not frustrated. This is not the place.
Any questions, comments? Yes.
This is a great and super inspiring story, and I would love to share notes. One of the questions that I have is around how the funds that you're deploying is going to redistribute power functionally in terms of wealth distribution. So to tie that into circular economy, for us, like one of the vehicles that the circular economy represents is that so many materials globally that we're harvesting forests from mines, most of them are ending up in cities, and then most of them are ending up as waste, but they actually represent a huge amount of captured value. And if you can actually create new value chains that are owned by communities, then they can own that value and then redistribute wealth in that way. So that's actually like one of these linking pins that we see as like, okay, well, if you can really start to train people to build new types of businesses around this, like you create a permanent value redistribution chain. And I'm wondering how the 3 projects at the school, the clinic, how are you looking at that, like the power redistribution side?
So we have one partner that we incubate with a business incubator and accelerator. We just felt that there was not enough innovation on creating opportunities for low-income individuals. So this group is really place-based. So what we're doing is supporting that group to support entrepreneurs. So we just made a commitment of we're granting $6 million for that group for the next 5 years. So we have a base, and they really hone in this community. And right now we are standing up a revolving lump fund for some of the businesses that are located in that DMLP, and for the individuals that are creating businesses product builders.
Any questions? Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious across the board, because a lot of the place-based work is still based on relationships and challenging power dynamics that are dependent on, could be different each block to block. Have you found, I'm curious across the board, like what does it look like, those signs of resistance? Are there consistencies across the case studies of different communities of like what it really looks like for people to change the cultures of thought and to accelerate, so that although it is so dependent on the face, the like beauty of the human spirit and change can accelerate? Could you think of like what that looks like?
So leadership matters because this is an exercise of resistance, durability. So places that have been able to show progress in these have group of leaders that are committed to the space more than anything else. Then they are very, very good about bringing together others to start layering up sources of power and sources of technical work, but requires some level of continuity, and that goes back to leadership and leadership policy.
Yes, anything to understand and social resistance or
Changing mindsets. Well, what we try to do is always create the win-win. And so figuring out what it means for, if we're working with Atrium, a hospital system, like what are they trying to get at the end of the day? What are we trying to get at the end of the day? And then marrying those two together so that, especially being a fundraiser, I don't want to have to, at the end of the year, say this is what we did. I want all along the path. They win, we win. And I think that's what's happened in Charlotte is we can line up all those goals and find one common strand. And I think that would be true for any community if you could find that common ground.
I think too that just there can be different trajectories that end up in the same goal. So for Puerto Rico, this social and economic mobility opens the door for solar conversations. In Puerto Rico, energy security is very bad. If you've read the news, my family loses power once a week. Like, it's insane. So if you kind of talk to those problems and like create solutions that kind of empower the local community, I feel like that applies to every single case as well. Kind of find a solution, a win-win for them, because if you can create, tackle the energy crisis through economic mobility, then that's a holistic solution right there. And I think that applies to, every location, finding that kind of pinpoints or pressure point that can unlock, a ton of solutions that the community would organically buy into. Anything, any other questions? If not, I'll say closing statements.
Hello. Thanks so much for sharing what you're doing. One of the things about the position plan is how the private sector or different forms of sectors execute what they're doing in the context of a subnational government plan. What has been your experience working with the government in terms of their role and how we are doing, operationalize that so that you actually get a sort of win-win mechanism as a government? So I'd love to hear a little bit.
So we actually, because one of the organizations that we created 10 years ago, we have become the data source for economic mobility policy in Puerto Rico. So an idea, actual work that we did, for example, on the 2020 elections, was that we actually evaluated the platforms for the political parties in Puerto Rico for 40 years prior to that. And having 57% of child poverty, nobody had essential child poverty. So we actually put together a roadmap to address child poverty from the policies at that point. We had wide support in terms of groups in the island, and basically at the end of the election cycle, all the political parties included child poverty as essential in their platforms. The result of that is, like 2 years ago, we have a mixed government, but they actually unanimously passed a law establishing a goal to reduce child poverty in the next decade in Puerto Rico. So what that allows is that it creates a system, the framework for investments.
Yeah.
Because the public sector now is saying, this is a priority, there's a mandate to deal with this at the agency level. But that was actually, we put together the recommendations, we put together some of the coalitions that advocate on that we have, and now what we feel that will be the next step is how we organize capital that help make that transition.
Awesome. Colin.
Wow.
I really want to thank everyone for being here, taking the time to, come during your busy climate week. As we saw today, place-based transition takes very different journeys from Charlotte with the more forward-facing green solutions to Puerto Rico, which was more of the social and economic challenges being addressed that eventually will have those green solutions implemented in them. So I hope that one key takeaway from tonight was the exploration of place-based transitions and how they can start very differently, but ultimately want to achieve the same goal. Whether it's through, these SDGs that are more on the economic side or responsible consumption and production. I feel like everyone has a place where they can provide some sort of expertise, because place-based transitions can, start anywhere. And these SDGs need to be achieved by 2030. We're not quite there yet, but I'm sure, and I feel hopeful that place-based transition funds can amplify and help this, change happen quicker. We really want to thank you from the Peace Department, Metabolic, Open Earth, Dark Matter, for taking the time to be here. Please stay, grab some food, grab a drink, have conversations on where you think you might fit in this place-based transition fund journey. Thank you again. Have a great night.